Why are used Audis so cheap? Is it the gimpy looks? The minivan styling? High rate of repossessions? Well, really, it's none of those. But if you've been shopping for used Audis on the used car market, then you'll probably appreciate that you're seeing some amazing deals, but it comes with a caveat. We're going to talk about it. First reason why used Audis are so cheap is when you consider once warranty runs out, everybody's afraid, they're scared, they're running for the hills for perceived reliability issues. Look, right here is a classic example. We have an Audi, definitely we have some oil spillage. You'll look through the radiator, that's not the radiator leaking. We actually have some kind of oil that's pouring on the ground. There's something leaking behind the rear main seal, and that's an unfortunate reality because a lot of Audi owners tend to find these kinds of failures, but that's not uncommon because according to RepairPal, looking at statistically, Audis have a rating of about 3 out of 5 star. But on that note, that ranks them about 28 out of 32 in terms of overall brands, which puts them almost at the bottom of the barrel. Now, while the reliability isn't the worst car on the planet, they have reliability challenges. The older ones are worse, and certainly as we get into some of the newer vehicles, they seem to be getting a little better, but there's some serious challenges because the annual servicing on average for an Audi, depending if you blend out the low end, the top end, you know, an SQ8 versus all the way down to, you know, an A4, when you blend it average, $987 is the average annual maintenance cost. And that puts it way up from $652 of the blended average of all vehicle brands across the industry. The other issue is that failure rates are significantly higher than the average. Most brands are around 0.4 times per year. In other words, every 2 years you might have something significant kick in that you need to get rectified. Unfortunately, Audis are more like 0.8, which means almost every year you're dealing with some sort of major issue or something that's going to need some dollars thrown at it to get it back on the road. And the severity ranks at about 13% relative to the industry average when it does fail at about 12%. So it's slightly above average in terms of overall severity when there is a failure. And sadly, Audi gained some reputation with some of the durability issues with some of their old TFSI engines, with carbon fouling, leaks, coolant, water pump problems, intake manifolds. And they've also had issues with some of their single row timing chains, which could let go at the drop of a hat and result in a catastrophic engine boom. But ultimately, Audi has some ups and downs. They have some hits and misses, and they have some great models and some not such great models. For example, this generation of A4 was plagued with problems. Gearbox issues, coolant leaks, oil leaks, you name it. There was no shortage of issues plaguing these vehicles. This generation with the 1.8 turbo in the A4 was one of those vehicles that you wanted to run away from. Absolutely horrific. But then they have some of their best models, like this version here. I almost bought one a few years ago. The TTRS has a very specific engine that's been around a long time, and Audi definitely knew how to build an engine for this particular application. That same engine, which is a turbocharged 5-cylinder engine, makes about 400 horsepower connected up to a dual clutch gearbox, absolutely lightning fast. Now, the only problem is the DCT does need a little excessive amount of maintenance, but that engine is almost bulletproof. And yes, you get great calipers, details like this, fold-away mirrors, no sunroof on here, but this shares the skins with the RS3, which is essentially the same vehicle. Right here, the TTRS is an absolute gorgeous unit. You get carbon fiber along the bottom, you get big exhaust tips, look, fit your whole fist in there pretty much, and of course LEDs every which way. These are absolutely gorgeous. First generation did give you a manual gearbox or a double clutch, and the latest generations were double clutch only DCTs. This is an example of a good model, but that's the problem. There's some blended good, bad, and ugly. Another reason why they're so cheap on the used market is depreciation, which is all sort of one and the same. But when you consider the fact that the average car nowadays is a little different than pre-2020, nowadays most cars are still holding about 70 to 80% of their value after 2 to 3 years. Most Audis are still down to about 40%, with 5 years coming around and they're barely hanging on at 50% of their value. Unless you're buying an exclusive one of the specific RS models that's highly sought after, most modern Audis, because a lot of them are now going EVs, a lot of them, of course, like the e-tron, just aren't selling, and they can't even give them away. That's part of the problem. So depreciation's hitting Audi a lot harder than a lot of other brands. It's going to cost more after warranty, so therefore a used vehicle is likely going to have less value to the second and third owners, therefore it drives prices down. The next issue is because of cars like this, or cars like this, or cars like these. They're older cars, older, used, paint is faded, headlights are faded, they don't have the latest performance or technology. And it's all about, because it's a modern luxury vehicle, luxury vehicles are often things that people like to brag about. They use it to show that their neighbors don't have something like that. They can one-up somebody at work. That's ultimately what a lot of people buy luxury car for, bragging rights. That's right. Ultimately, having an older used Audi just doesn't make a lot of sense for people that bought them in the first place, especially the first owners. They're looking for the next latest and greatest, so they're always trading up. So if you're showing up at a high school reunion and you say you drive an Audi, you don't want to show up in something like this. You want to move up into something that looks more like this. Or you definitely want to show up in something like this. The RS7 is one of their hottest cars. Any of the premium models and the latest and the greatest show to other people that you have made it. You've got the wealth, you've got the riches, and that unfortunately is just a reality. A lot of people, when they buy these cars, the luxury cars, they're the latest and they're the greatest. Drive it for 3 or 4 years, all of a sudden you got a bigger screen inside, you've got the new fresh engine that puts down more power, new fresh design language. Nobody wants the old car and this constant trading up to the next model and trying to stay ahead of the curve and always trying to look like that guy that's made it. Well, you can't be driving an old Audi, and therefore you're hitting a lot of these old Audis are starting to slam the market. So a lot of people just look to buy the latest and the greatest, and the older cars, they may still have decent miles on them, they may still be in relatively good shape, and they might even be some of the more reliable versions of the brand, but it doesn't matter. It's not the latest and the greatest. So that's why it offers a huge opportunity for people looking to get on the secondary market, because the prices drop so aggressively, because some people just want to have the latest and the greatest. Another reason why a lot of these are cheap on the used market comes down to reliability, or again, it's not just maintenance costs, but it's reliability, breakdowns, oil burning, the patented oil burning technology, or even just the unexpected breakdowns. You're driving down the road and all of a sudden, boof, you blow a bunch of oil, you get a check engine light, and there's low oil pressure. This unexpected breakdowns is a reliability concern. When you got lots of plastic fittings like this, they snap off, lots of plastic under the hood, they snap and break. A lot of the coolant hoses, they let go and dump coolant on the ground. Over complex electrical systems, which means that you're often diagnosing a lot of problems and spending thousands of dollars in the shop trying to troubleshoot a problem that just hanging around and hanging around. And the overall idea of reliability just is something a lot of people are concerned with. That's why a lot of times it's nice to own these vehicles when they're brand new. But after that 3-year mark and the warranty's gone, a lot of people just shy away. They want to dump their car as quick and fast as they possibly can, or because of the rich man syndrome, they just want to trade it up and move into the next glorious car. They don't want to have anything to do with something that's 4, 5, or 6 years old. Most people know that a lot of the German-made vehicles these days are highly complex. Technical equipment, lots of plastics, direct injection, and a lot of systems that are very hard to diagnose and need a very specific set of skills to figure out what's ailing them. The next issue for Audi holding their value or not, and essentially being cheap on the used market, comes down to market dynamics. There's this constant back and forth. New technology is bringing people in the door, but then they get bored because technology changes so quickly. And this brand as well fits slot right between Porsche as well as Volkswagen. A lot of people want Volkswagens. They go with the Audi, the VAG group, they go with the basic, the Jettas, the Golfs, and that seems to satisfy because, as an example, the Golf R is essentially a rebadged and reskinned Audi S3. You see, there's a lot of redundancy between the brands, and a lot of times people on the secondary market actually are driving up prices that are more niche cars like the Golfs rather than the Audi A3 series or S3 series, which don't really have a strong following, so that secondary market hurts certain models. So many people, when they're looking for used cars, they're looking for something that's going to go the distance. Well, if they're looking at a Volkswagen versus an Audi, which in some cases are very similar products, an A4 versus a Jetta, they might consider the simpler option. A lot of people do, because they know there's less to go wrong. And so sometimes, believe it or not, the easier, the simpler cars sometimes resell for higher dollars than their counterparts on the luxury car segment. Even though the luxury car was much higher new, it's now done a flip and it's done a 180, and the non-luxury brand like a Volkswagen might actually hold better value on the secondary market. But another part of that market dynamic comes down to competition, and there's a lot of it. There's always new interesting models popping up. I mean, here's a model that's going to steal a little bit of that market share. Now, it's not a luxury car brand, but it's luxury car money, and a lot of people will start buying vehicles like that, or even vehicles that they know they would rather buy something like this than a used Audi. So a lot of times people are going to more gravitate to some of the non-luxury brands like Toyotas and Hondas. Those vehicles are known reliability, they're going to stick with that. There's also competition on the new and used segments. Vehicles like Cadillac, Lincoln. There's a lot of domestic products too that are offering up some levels of competition. Even the Genesis now in this particular unit also gives you four-wheel drive. The GV70 gives you a nice package, beautiful SUV, beautiful wheels, two-tone detailing, large sunroof on top, fold-away mirrors, and one of the nicest interiors in any brand, bar anything premium from Germany. Here you have great headlights, some great detailing on the front end, and if you didn't look too close, a lot of people mistake this for a Bentley. That's right, a lot of competition like this exists out there right now. So considering the high cost of maintenance, parts, replacements, the durability challenges, the complexity, and all of the competition, a lot of these secondary market Audis just suffer because they're overly complex. They're pricey to begin with, they're gonna take a hit, and that's why they do. And right here we have the SQ8. Essentially, if you're looking at this vehicle, you know then it's a Porsche Cayenne, it's also a Lamborghini Urus. Essentially, this comes with a 4.4 liter twin turbo V8, and that means a lot of this. Not just for servicing, but also for parts. And it's that parts availability and parts cost which scare people away. So when you open the hood of a Lamborghini Urus, a lot of the parts, like the ignition coils, they actually have Volkswagen or Audi parts on them. A lot of parts are relatively interchangeable. And if you do a cross-reference or a cross-match, you'll find that a lot of the parts you'll find on Lamborghini, Porsche, Audi, like this vehicle, as well as Volkswagen and the Atlas and a lot of these other vehicles are going to share a lot of the same parts. The difference is, what brand do you have on the front of your hood? Do you have the Audi, Porsche, Lamborghini, or the Volkswagen? Because depending on which brand you have on the hood is going to grossly alter the value of those parts you put in. The sad reality is a lot of people don't know that, don't want to share, challenge the notion, don't want to do the search. But there's lots of forums online that share those. There's actual parts lists that people are sharing all over the place, and you can save a ton of money. But the problem is, a lot of people are scared. They're fearful of a lot of these expensive parts. Audi, you realize this part, probably you'll find it in the Volkswagen parts. This radiator, you'll probably likely find that radiator in a Volkswagen parts bin. You'll probably find this horn in a Volkswagen parts bin. So here, this might cost you, an Audi might cost you $280. In Volkswagen, that might only cost you $80. Boxes here, this might cost you $562 per side because there's two of them. But in the Volkswagen world, if you find this and there's a cross-reference part, you may only find that part to be worth $160 and save yourselves a ton of money. See, but that's the reality, and a lot of people are fearful of the parts. The parts can and are very expensive. You've got to be very, very mindful of that. And if you are keeping these long term, you've got to start searching out, looking who builds the same parts. Again, if you're driving a Lamborghini, you want to look for parts that are coming out of Audi and Volkswagen parts bins. Same thing with Audi. You want to look for something that's created for a Volkswagen part and possibly cross-reference that and then go to the Volkswagen store and buy that part. You would be shocked at the amount of parts that are crossed over and used in all of these brands. A lot of money can be saved, but a lot of money can be spent if you don't do the homework. Now, part of the resistance with this transformation into EVs, hybrids, all this technology means that it's very little hands-on. And thus far, the do-it-yourselfers, the DIYers, love to get in there and wrench. And buying a used Audi on the used car market for a drastic discount is a huge value opportunity. I've done it for years. I've lived and thrived on buying used cars. I've virtually never bought a new car in my life simply because you can get such a bang for buck. I've learned how to actually wrench, and because I know how to work on my cars, I've been able to keep expensive cars in my stable for relatively pennies on the dollar. But that's going away because now, with the advent of electrification and these plug-in cars like this just means less and less people are going to be able to work on these vehicles after the warranty is up. And unfortunately, as great as this may be for some people, even though there's no engine or transmission like you're finding in a conventional vehicle, many would argue that electrified vehicles are simpler and more reliable. There's still a lot of electrical problems, electrical issues, and a vast and ramped up level of electronics in these vehicles that are way hands-off. A DIYer will never be able to really troubleshoot, diagnose, or repair any of these EVs themselves, or even hybrids that share an internal combustion engine and an electrical plug-in. It's becoming pretty much those who can afford to buy them and take them to the shop and having them serviced at the dealership network are the only ones who are going to be able to drive late model vehicles. And that's not exclusive to Audi. That's definitely an industry-wide challenge. So currently DIYers are enjoying a great opportunity and an ocean of used vehicles that they can still wrench on. It's a great opportunity to get a deal, drive some of your favorite cars, and do it on a shoestring budget. That is possibly changing, but for now, that's a huge advantage and why I've often bought myself used cars. Shopping for other luxury brands? Definitely check out why are used BMWs so cheap and why are used Mercedes-Benz so cheap. Hope to see each and every one of you in the next one, everybody. See you real soon. Bye-bye.